first white belt tournament. You're paired up in a bracket with about 5 or so guys. First guy you go against has been wrestling for his entire life. You get double-legged into the mat. He scores his 2 points on the takedown. The pressure's overwhelming, and you submit to side control. And he just pressures into you and holds you down for the whole match, and you lose. And it's embarrassing. Let's talk about the advantages wrestlers have when coming into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, specifically in these white belt tournaments. Now, I've never wrestled. Unfortunately, I missed my opportunity coming up through the high school and middle school system. I wish I did, but I didn't. However, I've trained with countless wrestlers. I've had coaches who are specialized in wrestling, so I do have a good context for wrestlers in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The advantages wrestlers have in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu come down to 3 main things. The first is going to be takedowns. Wrestlers have some of the best takedowns in the entire art of grappling. Judo has good takedowns as well, but I'd argue wrestling takedowns are a little bit more effective because they're a little bit into the next thing, which is toughness. Wrestling instills a toughness that even judo doesn't always instill. Judo is a little bit more gentle, in my opinion. It's a little bit more trying to get the person off their feet with the least amount of effort. And that's a beautiful thing when it can be accomplished flawlessly and you get the perfect throw and their feet come off the ground and you get them on the mat with minimal effort. That's beautiful. Wrestling ain't like that, dog. Wrestling is like you have to get them on the mat. You have to beat them into submission in the 3 minutes you have. You have to pin them. You're going to do everything you have to do to grab their legs, pick them up, and smash them into the mat. And this leads into the third thing wrestlers have, and that's control. The goal of wrestling is to get your opponent on the mat and pin their shoulders on the mat. In judo, you can also win with a pin, but I'm talking about wrestlers here. The takedowns, the toughness, and the control are some of the most difficult things to instill in a white belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Some people are a little bit naturally aggressive, but most people are not. Most people have to be taught how to be physically aggressive, how to get those collar ties, how to move someone around, how to snap them down, how to... I'm shaking the camera here. How to instill your will into somebody else against their best interest. You're doing everything you can to take them off their feet, pin them on the mat, and eventually submit them. And I've said it before in some other videos, but a really good wrestler who learns a couple submissions can be competitive with blue belts in a very short period of time, like 2 weeks to a month, if they're a really good wrestler. Obviously, if you wrestled, 2 weeks in middle school, it's not the same as someone who came up through a Division I college and wrestled at that level. It's much different. There are levels to every game, but even someone who was mediocre or just kind of average through high school wrestling is going to have years of grappling experience that translate very well to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I made a video about some of the pitfalls that wrestlers have in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but truly this doesn't compare to the advantages they have. The advantages wrestlers have in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu severely outweigh the disadvantages. The disadvantages basically come down to they stick their arms out a little bit too much and they sometimes expose their neck on takedowns. I made a whole video about that, but truthfully, they have way more advantages than they do disadvantages. And simply having that toughness really goes a long way. Having 2 to 5 really solid takedowns, even if it's a single leg and a double leg and a snap down. That's basically all you need to have a good stand-up game. And a lot of people, especially at Gracie Barra schools, don't like to do good takedowns. And pulling guard, I guess, is an effective strategy, but you can't pull guard if someone quickly double legs you and puts you on the mat, takes the wind out of you. When you're going into these white belt tournaments against someone who's wrestled before, maybe you want to pull guard, but even then, they can have overwhelming top pressure, and if you're not a really solid guard player who's able to take your legs and use that to negate their pressure, they can pass your guard pretty quickly. And once they're in side control and they are putting all their weight down into you, they are, smashing you into the mat. I've seen a lot of matches be decided on 2 points plus the 3 guard pass, so it's 5-0. And if you're in a white belt tournament, matches are like 5 minutes long, and in the first 30 seconds you've got taken down, that's 2 points, and then they pass your guard, that's 3 points, and then they're smashing you in side control. It's so demoralizing. It becomes so easy to submit, not just simply tap out, but just to give up in that position. Because in order to get back on top, you're going to have to regain your guard, which is 0 points. You're gonna have to sweep them, which is 2 points. Maybe you can get in mount, okay, then it's 4 points, then you're on top, right? Then you got 6 to 5. But it's hard to sweep a wrestler because they post their legs out. Their number one thing is don't get pinned on their back. It's very hard to sweep a wrestler unless you're very, very solid about controlling their arms, taking their post away, and really getting that leg out from underneath them. When I was first starting jiu-jitsu, some of the most difficult people to go against were those wrestlers because they had such good base. They had such a strong ability to stop sweeps and stay on top. And that toughness that is really hard to get. Even if you train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a long time, it can be hard to get that toughness that just comes naturally in wrestling. So many wrestlers are used to grueling practices. They're used to training hours upon end and getting those workouts in and getting just generally tough and getting that built into your muscles. It's not something that always comes with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which can be a little bit more laid back, a little bit more chill, a little bit more fun. And that's why we love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Well, that's one of the reasons why I love it, because it's a fun sport, and we're there to have fun, but it's more fun if you're the hammer versus if you're the nail, and wrestlers are used to being the hammer. So those top 3 things are major advantages wrestlers have in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And the other thing is, every single move you can do in wrestling is all legal in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There isn't any wrestling move that you're not allowed to do. You know, there are some new moves, right, when transitioning to, submission grappling. For example, you're going to learn the submissions, you're going to learn, not to get you can get pinned, right, because you're just playing guard. But you can take all of that experience for the most part with a few minor modifications and really excel at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. A lot of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people I know to this day started in wrestling, especially in America, because you can come through middle school, high school, especially in college. If you make it to college wrestling, you're a killer. If you start in college wrestling, you should probably start in blue belts. I mean, that's up to you and your coach, but if you make it to college wrestling and you have like 2 months of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're going to be competitive with most blue belts just because you've got years, if not a decade of wrestling experience, which is grappling. And grappling is grappling, controlling people is controlling people, and takedowns are some of the hardest parts of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but that's where all matches start. All matches in competition start on the feet. And yeah, you can pull guard, but if you pull guard against a good wrestler and he throws those legs to the side and passes your guard instantly and smashes you on top, it kind of sucks. And really tough top pressure, really intense, overwhelming force, it's going to cause you to give up. I mean, especially as a white belt. I've been in those positions before where you're in side control and you just want a match to end because it sucks and you feel demoralized. Those wrestlers just have it in their mind, just keep going, grind, right? Wrestling matches are very short, so they're very used to intense bursts of energy and they just don't stop. So those are some of the massive advantages wrestlers have when transitioning to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's almost unfair, but that's part of the game, right? It's training.